Hello and welcome to the Patreon only Chill Polyamory live chat, where the first Sunday of every month I welcome all of my patrons who are €3 and up to come and hang out, ask me anything. Let's talk about polyamory, non-monogamy, relationship anarchy, and we put this on YouTube afterwards, so hopefully our chat can be helpful for other folks who can't be there. So if you would like to be there next time, you can support the work that I do and also join in the chats. I also offer pen pal service, so that's on patreon.com/chillpolyamory. Okay, the first question in the chat says, I'm participating in a TV documentary on polyamory airing this Thursday. Congratulations, that's cool. I love seeing us on screen. We just need more. We need variety. It says, I am a bi character as I am the partner of one of the couples in focus. My question is, because of my lack of experience with media, I might be asked to participate in some kind of morning show format because the main couple will be traveling. Do you have any advice for me on how I can best represent polyamory and what pitfalls there might be? I'm a bit nervous about saying yes to that format, but at the same time, we are all doing the whole thing because of representation, knowledge, and support for people who are or know someone who's non-monogamous. So the show itself is good and nuanced, but a bit pitying of the woman in the couple because the host identifies with her and doesn't understand, and the couple is a bit hierarchical. Can you give me some tips or advice? Yeah, this is really thoughtful. You're already seeing, behind the scenes in production, anyone who's participated in some kind of like more mainstream representation of polyamory, or even just like monogamous people telling our stories, no matter how well-intentioned they are, there's gonna be some stuff that falls flat or doesn't really feel like it's representing you, or you're going to see some skewing in some angles. And that's really any nonfiction story. Documentaries are not true. They are an opinion. And saying this as somebody who got a fine arts degree in documentary production and nonfiction storytelling. My focus was actually on the ethics of editing. That was my specialty because I was like, okay, well, if we're telling a true story, but I'm who gets to pick what's in the frame and I get to edit it, then where are the ethics of like what's true and me being God deciding what's true or not, framing it however which way. So yeah, my heart is with you because that's incredibly vulnerable to be filmed and not have any control over the edit. So you've probably gotten some ignorant questions, well-meaning ignorant questions of like, well, don't you ever get jealous? Or who's the real partner, the main partner? Or, what do you do when the hinge partner is needed in two places at once? Like, who do you pick? Like, any questions that you're like, I've heard this a million times, what would you want your go-to answer to be? Because I think it can be helpful to kind of know where you'll go with that or what you would like to speak to with that before, and to not be as like on the spot trying to figure it out. Because I do know that in that kind of format with a morning show, you've maybe got 3 to 5 minutes. And so any kind of like, what is your thesis message that you want to get out there. Sometimes I will have like anchoring points, like if I'm interviewed briefly or when I do a 30 to 90 second TikTok, I'm like, what is my thesis statement here? And I try to be quite succinct and be sure that if nothing else, this statement gets said. And you can really work that into almost any question that gets asked so that you feel like your conversation is still on your terms. So if somebody's going to throw something ignorant at you, how might you want to deflect? For example, like, well, I understand that not everybody, gets it or relates to it, nor do they have to. I'm very happy. This is the happiest I've ever been. We are very supportive, and this is so sustainable for me in these ways. Whatever it is that you're like, let's bring it back to my main point so that you don't feel like you're losing control of your own story in the conversation. And also people respond to vibes almost more than they respond to content. And what I mean by that is like, whatever you're saying, your body language and your tone and your vibes are really going to be what people hear loudest when they're watching video. That's been my experience anyway, as someone making video for 7 years, right? I can say something like, I'm really at ease. But if I don't look at ease in that moment, because I'm nervous to be on camera or whatever, but I know I am at ease generally, but if I don't look at ease in that moment, then I might be misunderstood. Now, you're gonna be misunderstood. You're gonna be willfully misunderstood by people who want to misunderstand. But there are going to be polyamorous people or polycurious people watching who are going to hang on your every word and be so excited to see themselves reflected. And that's who your audience is, right? That's who you're really speaking to, is the person who doesn't feel heard or doesn't even have language to express what they want. People are going to want to tell whatever story they want to tell. So really be self-protective of your own narrative. And if something feels off or a framing feels off, you can be charming and warm and be like, well, I could see how you'd see it that way. And also no, you don't have to be like, I need to push back on this and confront what you said. You don't have to get into it with people, but like, there is a way to gracefully be like, respectfully, my experience is different, da 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 da. But yeah, I've said some stuff that I even regretted the words that I said or the way that the framing that I said it, but because my vibes were pretty relaxed or because my vibes were trying to express it, it came off the way I wanted anyway. So you don't even have to be necessarily so militant with your language if you protect your peace. You know you're happy, you love your life. So that's not up for debate, All right, next question in the chat. We are a married couple and have been polyamorous for about 6 years. Recently, we got into some really messy relationships, and it has me questioning if polyamory really is for me. I haven't dated any more than 6 months and have no desire to date. I don't know if it is a break or a permanent departure from polyamory or perimenopause. Fair, right? Your body be going through changes. Hormones are in flux. They continue, if it was just me, I probably would just write out where I am in the process, but since my hubby still wants to date, I feel like I need to decide what I want or how I can support him being poly while I, perhaps temporarily, remain monogamous. There is an episode of my podcast, I Could Never, with Lily Kerrigan. I believe we called it Let's Call It What It Is. That's that episode from this past season. And she talks about a long stretch of time where she didn't want to date, she couldn't date, and her partner was still dating, and sort of like this de facto mono-polyam situation where it wasn't a rule imposed, it was just what she just didn't have an interest. And like, I think it's good to not date if you don't want to date, right? Like, it's not nice to the other person if you don't want to be there. And it can be weird to have your partner be out and adventuring and meeting new people and everything like that. There can be a dissonance, there can be big feelings that come up, there can be fear, So I think just day by day, talking about what you might need to remember that you're secure, what your partner is looking for, how you can avoid any surprises. I think avoiding surprises is the biggest thing during change. Change is scary enough. We don't know where all the chips are going to fall, and our body can be bracing for bad news. And so if there can be a lot of proactive, hey, I met this person, I just want to give you a heads up, like I might go on a date with them, how are you feeling? Like as much proactive conversation with you as possible. As well, you said you got into some messy relationships, and if there can be, and I imagine you probably already are, but if there can be kind of like a little autopsy on what was messy about that, what about those relationships were rocky, what wasn't working for you, what might you want to change in your approach? Like, did you learn anything about yourself, about pain points or needs or triggers or things that bring out the worst in you, right? Like, we can learn a lot going and reflecting on, relationships that fell apart in hopes of not repeating history, right? So how will you not repeat history? And I think as well, like if you've dated together before, I don't know if that was part of what you were saying, is dating as a duo. Once people are individually dating, there can be like a little bit of ego death that happens of, we were a unit and now we are, like you're kind of reckoning with your own autonomy and your own individuality as well as your partner's own autonomy and their individuality. And there can be like a little bit of, just in case you had any like of your security wrapped up in the duo-ness of it all, right? We get told that the duo equals safety. That can be internalized no matter how long you're doing polyamory. Like it can be rattled whenever you're like, oh, right. They're their own person on their own adventure. They're going to discover things about themselves that have nothing to do with me. They're going to, explore in these ways on an adventure I'm not on. And And that can be humbling, and you can still have your own adventures together. You can still like root your security in the fact that you always come back together as a duo, that like they can leave and they don't abandon you, like that those aren't the same thing. They leave and come back, leave and come back. Really like physically grappling with the reality of like we are individuals, if that makes sense. If that's not landing for you, if that's not resonating for you, fair enough. I say it just in case somebody out there listening is like, oh, that's how I feel, because that's a thing as well. It can be scary, and you can absolutely get through it as long as you just keep talking and keeping gentle and compassionate with any feelings that come up. You're not bad at this if you struggle. You're just noticing feelings and talk about them, right? Like, it's human, it's normal. Change is scary, and we want reassurance. And so yeah, just be good to yourself and each other as you might like misstep or misspeak or accidentally like forget to update each other on something. Like, if you're doing something you've never done before, how would you know how to do it perfectly, right? So I give a lot of grace as well, as long as I can see it's well-intentioned and that there's not malice or willful deception going on, you know? Okay, I got a private message. Hi, Genevieve, it's so nice to be here. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for being a patron. They say, my meta issued a monogamy or we break up ultimatum to my partner. Oosh. Okay, let's talk about that. They said it was triggered by our growing connection and they felt threatened in their hierarchical structure. I'm not hierarchical myself in my other connections, but I was willing to make it work as a secondary for this person. Since the ultimatum, I've felt conflicted because even if my partner chooses to stay polyamorous and end their other relationship, it still feels icky and scary to continue our relationship on the end of this. I just worry this leaves room for resentment towards me, even though I feel good about how I've handled this situation. That is so brutal. That is so hard, because you are not only in a less powerful position as a secondary with like getting less say in things when it comes to a sort of rigid ranking system, but now with this ultimatum issued to your partner, that's such a powerless feeling. Like, I've not been specifically there, but I have seen that play out a lot. And monogamy or we break up, your partner is themselves at a turning point. Do they want polyamory for themselves, right? If they choose polyamory, that would be their choice for themselves, right? Because even if, so let's say I'm in this position. I actually have had people say like, I want to be monogamous with you. They didn't give me a rigid ultimatum, but like it was a prompt for me to evaluate, like, even in a vacuum, how do I love and how do I want to be in relationship? And so regardless of who else I'm dating, it's a choice that I'm going to reinforce for myself. And so even if I was single and just dated one person and they're like, why don't we be monogamous? My answer would still be no. So your partner's decision to be polyamorous or not is their decision for their life. That's their life path, right? And it's not to blame you, and it's not about you. Your presence might have prompted this rupture, right? Because one person wants monogamy and one apparently does not. That, like, your presence might have prompted it, but it's not your fault, if that makes sense, right? Because the existence of a metamor, that could be anyone, right? It's like sort of an existential question about structure that the two of them are having, prompted by the concept of polyamory and the concept of a growing other relationship. So I say all of that not to minimize your role, not to say that you absolutely clearly matter. Like, it's clear that you're a significant partner to your partner, otherwise that wouldn't rattle their hierarchy, right? But I'm just saying, like, in terms of you're fearing that there will be resentment towards you, if that were to happen, I would gently reframe and be like, I just want to remind you that did you choose this for yourself? Even if I wasn't in the picture and you got that ultimatum, what might you say, you know? Or if I was somebody else, what might you say, you know? And I really try and prompt, like, if there's any blame coming on me for somebody's choice in their own life, I'm like, you know, like, can I put that back on you, right? Because like, I ain't your boss, I ain't your mama, I ain't strong enough. Like, you even in a secondary position are not powerful enough in this dynamic to call the shots, right? Explicitly, that was their decision. And I don't date like that either. It does feel icky and scary to have that as a possibility. But if your partner says, no, I'm gonna be polyamorous, point blank period, I would hope that would reinforce your security that no one else would be able to give a similar ultimatum. If your partner is like, well, I'm gonna close the relationship and see how this goes and try and love on this partner, and if they choose to put their energy there and to part ways with you, that is good to know, right? Like, that would have happened at some point, unfortunately, if that is the choice, at least as far as what I've seen. And that fucking sucks, right? So I really hope that that's not the direction it goes. And if they're the type of person who would leave you and break your heart to comfort someone else, I'd rather know that sooner rather than later. Not stay in a dynamic that like disregards you so wholly. So I do hope that this person, you know, chooses polyamory for themselves if that's what they want, because if anything, I've seen resentment in the other direction. If somebody gives in to the ultimatum and then they just resent the partner that they're staying with, and then this like the attempt to save the original duo gets ruined by the ultimatum because it's like, oh, you won't let me be myself, right? We cannot control what other people want for their lives. And that is what your meta is clearly reckoning with and trying to regain control over. So I hope that your partner gets clarity on what they want, and whatever they choose is their choice. I think so much of polyamorous conflict comes from a struggle to be out of control. We don't control our partners. And I think monogamy, the framing of monogamy, can give us this illusion of control, this illusion of security, even though in monogamy, people could step out, they could cheat, they could fall in love with someone else, even in monogamy, right? Letting go of control is, I think, the work. Like, accepting our powerlessness over what we are powerless over, I think, is the work. If I were to say one thing, it's like, how can I get clarity on what I do and don't have power over, on what I can and cannot change? And usually what I can and cannot change is my own actions, my own words, the way that I carry myself, what I choose to invest energy into, right? I don't have power over someone else. That is how I find peace, because I stop fighting. I stop fighting with what I cannot control, you know? Easier said than done, but I really try to reach for acceptance of powerlessness. And not in a like feudal, like fatalistic way of like, I have no control, the world is ending. No, acceptance of what I don't have power over. Sort of like when we look up at the stars in the night sky and we realize how small we are, or we look at the deep ocean and we realize the enormity of the world. I try to keep that same humbled and grateful and clear feeling when I'm talking to a partner about their own life choices and what they want for themselves, because they have autonomy and I have no control over them, you know? What's beautiful is like, as I do that more and more, people go out, they learn more about themselves, they go have an amazing time, and they come back to me so happy. They're so in love with the relationship that we have that can let them be their fullest self. They love connecting with other people and then bringing that like enthusiasm back to me whenever we connect, right? Like, it builds. It's not taking from one to give to the other. If it feels like that, then that is a competition or a scarcity thing that needs to be addressed, because it doesn't have to be like that, right? My experience, especially in the last years, it's really been additive when I let go. And I'm like, you're your own person. Here's how I would like to be cared for and loved. And I hope you do that. And if you don't, then I might step back. You know, that's what I have control over and power over. And it's almost a relief to stop fighting, trying to make all the other players on the chessboard be just so, if that makes sense. You know, it's like a relief to not like to know that I can't do that. So to stop trying and just focus on me and what I can do, and sit with the reality that like I'm a small piece in this enormous world. And I'm so grateful for that. I don't know. I hope that's not too like airy fairy or whatever, you know. I just like that's really what it comes down to for me in terms of like a running thread of a lot of conflict and polyamory is like people just trying to control each other, much to everyone's dismay. Okay, how do you handle de-escalation while staying close physically and emotionally? Do you have any examples of it going well? So de-escalation looks different for everyone, but de-escalation work is grief work. It just, that's how I could summarize it in a nutshell. De-escalation means we're letting go of some part of our relationship that one or both of us hoped we would have. And it's not all or nothing. So it's grieving someone while still being with them. I've gone through that where like in past relationships, like I didn't want a certain kind of, you know, sexuality with someone, and they did. But we still cared about each other, and so we weren't gonna drop that connection, but there was some grief there. There's feelings of rejection there. And we just talked about it a lot and cried about it. They felt, you know, rejected and sensitive and angry and also don't want to like do something with me that I don't want to do. So it wasn't like they were like trying to convince me or anything, but it's similar to breakup feelings, but you're not breaking up. And so it's a uniquely like polyamorous thing. I think maybe monogamous couples who like are co-parenting and they get a divorce, but so they're still around each other trying to be friends, but they're divorcing. Like I think that might be adjacent or like a similar comparison for monogamous people, but polyamorous people go through this all the time where we like are just landing on what we want the relationship to be, what I want and of what you want, where's the overlap? And there's grief when they don't want what we want. So I just ride the waves of it, right? Grief is gonna do what it's gonna do. We go through the pain and the stress, and I just try and give a lot of grace. Like if someone snaps at me or, you know, isn't feeling their best because they're feeling sad, like, and vice versa. I just give a lot of space to not, you know, be like, you're not allowed to speak to me that way. I just like I hear you, you're mad, ouch. You know what I mean? It's like a compassionate acknowledging of they're going through it, and it's okay if you go through it, and let's try and be as good to each other as we can, you know? And eventually, hopefully, things settle into a new rhythm where you're both doing exactly what you want to do with each other. The overlap, you're both doing the overlap of what you both want. Sometimes people need a full break. They need to like hit reset, and they need to not see the person for a little while and kind of process a feeling of breakup and then come back together. That is pretty common, but I've absolutely stayed with people and seen them on the regular while we were saying, ow, I'm sad. You're going out to do the thing that I want to do with you. You're going out to do it with someone else. Ow, you know, and that aches. And can you be sensitive to not gush about how great that was because I'm hurting over here, you know? Like, it's a process. It's grief work. And it's absolutely possible to move through that and get to acceptance, because acceptance is part of grief. It's just, you know, sometimes with bargaining and and anger and deep sadness, you know, like we can cycle through all of those as well during de-escalation. So that's it broadly. I don't know what your specific situation is, but you're not alone. A lot of us have gone through that, and polyamory is beautiful in the sense that we don't have to be all or nothing, and it can be very challenging and rigorous emotional work because we're not all or nothing, you know? Sometimes it would be almost easier to fully walk away, but I'm so glad that I didn't have to completely lose someone just because we didn't want one thing together or, you know, one type of relationship. So I hope that for you as well, but good luck. Okay. Actually, now might be a good time to do my sort of like midway point that I always forget to do. Um, so if you are liking these chats, you can find more of them on this YouTube channel. If you're watching them, it's Chill Polyamory 2 TOO. I also have film and TV reviews that are on my other YouTube channel, just called Chill Polyamory. And that is where I have a little bit more fun, get a little bit more snarky. I look at non-monogamy on screen and I tease it. It's a good time, I hope. I like it, I don't know. And on my Patreon, I have 300 plus resources, personal story times, worksheets, different things about polyamory I've been posting every week since 2018. So lots of stuff. If you want to dig through the archives, it's patreon.com/chillpolyamory, in addition to hanging out in this space with me. And I have a podcast I mentioned earlier. It's called I Could Never. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. That is a storytime series of real non-monogamous stories. And we got a host of different situations of people all over the world. So hopefully you relate to at least one of them. That's my goal. I can't tell not everyone will relate to me. So I was like, let's get lots of people and you'll hopefully relate to one of them. So the podcast is called I Could Never. Okay, next question in the chat. Where do you stand on dating apps? I initially wasn't going to put myself on them because it felt antithetical to my desire for earnest person-to-person connection. But on the advice of a friend of mine, I went and opened a bunch of them: Tinder, Grindr, Hinge, etc. So far, I've had a few conversations and one ghosted a planned meetup. That sucks. I'm sorry. I tried FetLife, but was hit with a barrage of full frontal nudity. Nowhere that seemed focused on poly meetups. I bounced right off of that. I'm in Canada, if that makes any difference. So general reality is that people are largely not okay right now. There is a hum of distress in most spaces, in most countries, right? So I don't know, I take that context in, especially around the holidays and it's a new year, but I think 2025 was a particularly brutal year for a lot of people. A lot of people have money stress. A lot of people have gone through breakups. I've been supporting multiple close people in my life through breakups, so I don't know if you've experienced that. I say all of that because a lot of times when people are online or on these spaces, it's not always out of a casual, relaxed desire to meet someone new. Sometimes there is a preoccupation. Sometimes they want an ego boost. And this is no shade to that. I've gone on to the apps too and liked getting swipes because I was feeling low and that felt good, right? I think there's something to the way that our brains interact with these platforms and the UI of it that it's gamified in a way that doesn't incentivize actually meeting up at the end of the day. Now, a lot of us do meet up, luckily, but there is so much ghosting you've experienced. You even got to the point of planning a meetup and got ghosted. People have gone to the date and got no-showed, right? And so I don't say that to scare you, but just to say that specifically online platforms, I give it only as much energy as I'm willing to lose. And I don't give it more hours in a week than that, because otherwise I can feel depleted or I can get my hopes up and pinned on something. I assume people are going to ghost, frankly. That's and maybe that's kind of cynical. I don't think so. I think it's more self-protective of just I'm going into this with very low expectations. You seem cute. You want to hang out? I ping them again a few days later. Do you still want to hang out? They're gone. Okay, I figured that might happen, right? It's a pleasant surprise. It's a bonus if people actually do wind up meeting up. So I don't know if that's a helpful way to look at the apps, but I am on them and I don't invest all of my hopes in connection from them. It's sort of extra. There are in most major cities, now I don't know where in Canada you are, a lot of rural spaces. It's rougher out there, right? People expand their radius, but there's I've seen a lot of people do polyamory meetups, do tabletop game nights, do role playing. They go to LARPing events, Dungeons and Dragons. We're nerds, right? Largely, we're nerds. If you're not one of those folks, that's okay. Rock climbing is a big thing for polyamorous people. Anything that you want to do anyway, where your interests are, and if you feel comfortable to be openly polyamorous, I've seen a lot of people meet that way. And even just making polyamorous friends. the majority of people that I've dated, I've met through a friend of a friend, right? And I've just been like, oh, I love knowing more poly people. And then their partner is cute. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like it's a bit more organic in that way, has been my experience. Now, I've had good luck with the apps. I've made great friends with the apps, great friends with benefits. In Germany, you call it Freundschaft plus, friendship plus. So the apps can be lovely, but I just really... I think the nature of them, the platforms themselves, is something that I proceed with caution and a little bit of, arm's length. I'll believe it when I see it, like I'll trust in the meetup when the meetup happens. And I think the goal of just making more friends wherever you can, right, is long term how I see polycules form. Long term is making more polyamorous friends. Online forums, discords, when it comes to Reddit or Facebook groups, like proceed with caution if you are on those platforms. I just say those can be messy spaces, but you can also find a diamond in the rough and be like, oh, this dude seems rad, let's hang out, let's chat, and it kind of goes from there. So I wish I could had a magic answer of how to meet your next polyamorous partner. The thing is monogamous people struggle to meet monogamous partners. It's just, it's effort to meet the people that we want to bring close, regardless of the structure. It does narrow the dating pool a little bit when they're polyamorous, a lot in some cases. And there's probably more people out there that are poly than you think. So wherever you feel comfortable and safe to be out, it might even draw people in to you. So my last partner I met through Instagram, actually, but that was a unique case. But he mentioned that he was poly and I slid into his DMs. So, you never know. Alrighty. Next question that was emailed to me. It's a simple question. It says, what are things in a relationship that will make you walk away? I'll speak for myself. Do with that what you will. Obviously, there's the biggies, which is sexism, racism, classism, colonialism. I don't want to welcome you into my circle if there's the baseline difference of how we see the world and how we try to approach our own participation in or challenging of those systems. So that's just the biggies. I would say anybody who's entitled. I don't like entitlement, right? Because that seeps into everything. Anybody who feels entitled to my time, entitled to my energy, I have some free time this week, and they're like, well, why aren't you spending that with me? There's a way to ask that of hey, you're free. I'd love to see you. Would you want to this week? Right? That's very different than complaining of you weren't with me. You had extra time and you didn't spend it with me. You know what I mean? It's that kind of expectation that they should get their way and a sort of whining when they don't, that. I went on a date one time with somebody who, it was a chill date and we were walking and we went back to this sort of planetarium place and it was a cool night. I'm pretty on the asexual spectrum, right? I need a minute most of the time before I'm really interested in sex. And I mentioned that and I was I'm not really sure I want to have sex. And he got really whiny about it. And he was I already have enough friends. This and that. And I was oh, well, thank you so much for showing that to me because now it's a hard pass, right? You aren't entitled to my body just because we're enjoying our time together, right? So that's an extreme version when someone feels entitled to intimacy. But really entitled to energy, without discussion. That's hard for me. I also walk away from anyone who sees relationships as transactional. I keep an eye out on transactional thinking. There was a TikTok that went around, or almost a TikTok challenge of straight women going to their husbands and being hey, will you make me a cup of coffee? Just going up to them and asking them that to see what they would say. And so many of their husbands were well, why? What for what reason? What are you going to do for me? And then I saw a stitch with a lesbian couple. And these are generalities, right? There's plenty of awesome straight couples. I'm not coming for you. But I'm just saying, like, on average, right, when you're adhering a bit more to the norms, or when the norms suit what you want anyway, sometimes there's these autopilot things that kind of get absorbed along with it that aren't that great, that we should shed. And if you are queer or challenging norms, a lot of times you might be more likely to also be challenging those other things, if that makes sense. But there was a stitch with a lesbian couple who was like replying to that straight couple, and she went up to her girlfriend and she was like, can you make me a cup of coffee? And the girlfriend was on the phone. She was like, yeah, sure. And she just starts making it while she's having this other conversation and gives it to her. No second thought, right? I don't want somebody to be like, well, what's in it for me? What's your angle? You can say, no, I don't want to. That's fine. But it's the thinking of why. What's your game? I think also emotional immaturity is like a big one. And I'm patient with people. Like, I've grown a lot over the last decade. I was not always like feeling zen. I've said some things, put my foot in my mouth, and had to learn the hard way about how to love on people or avoid hurting people. Like, we can be patient with people if they are growing up or in the growing up process, but like, I'm not a partner's mom. And sometimes people will react as if I am. Not even a partner. I've had friend breakups where I was always in a giving position, but the minute that I needed something, or the minute that I was upset what they did, they threw like kind of a tantrum, and I was like, oh, weird, you know? Am I like in a mom role for you? I personally don't want that. And that's outside of a kink context, okay? Not talking about kink. I'm talking about like day-to-day, non-negotiated, not fun power dynamics, and emotional immaturity. And I'd say the last thing that comes to mind is probably punitive thinking. Anti-carceral abolitionist thinking is a must for me, you know? And I'm not militant about it. Like, I've also had to grow in that area and understand what abolition is and all of this and that. But it seeps into the tiny micro interactions that we have with each other. Where like, if I mess up, are you seeing that I'm changing? Are you, firm and clear that I've hurt you, but not then giving me the silent treatment, not then punishing me, not then bringing it up all the time as like to flagellate me, Like, if somebody wants you to hurt because they feel hurt, that's unnerving to me. Because when I'm hurt, I want repair. I want you to make it right, but I don't want you to suffer just because I've now been injured, right? I don't want to break your arm because you broke my arm. You broke my arm, fix it, help it. You know what I mean? If I can stretch that metaphor, but it's like not an eye for an eye type of thing. And when someone is punitive at any level, I'm cautious, because I think that drives more division and wedges between community members, and can lead to a lot of like, expelling people and canceling people in a way that is like not engaging in repair, not engaging in conflict resolution, So that is what comes to mind of things I would walk away from. Some people think that like trauma and big feelings and big struggles are deal breakers, and maybe they are for you. Maybe you have no capacity and you're like, if this person needs a lot of support, I got no energy for that, so it's a deal breaker for me, right? You can have your own deal breakers depending on your limits, depending on what you want with the person. I don't want that with that person. There's no desire for that, so the answer is no, right? That's fine. But it's not automatically a deal breaker if someone is struggling or if someone has big feelings. It's just a matter of like, what role do I want to play in that for them? Do I want to be a close support person? Am I in love with them and I want to be a partner and like really hold their hand on the daily about it? Do I want to be the fifth person that they call whenever they're having a hard time, right? It's not a red flag automatically when someone's going through it and having a hard time. It is a prompt for me to decide where in their orbit I want to be, if that makes sense. But I don't see it as a red flag. Some people are like, oh, they got really emotional when I went on a date, so they can't be polyamorous. I'm like, no. Maybe you don't want to be their support person, that's fine, but like, feelings are human. But it's the thinking, the transactional or the punitive and carceral or the entitled. It's like that thinking I don't want to be on the ride for someone unlearning that. If they unlearn it, they can come back to me. Great. Love to see you then. But I don't want to mess with it. It's only led to annoying conversations at best and really disruptive, hurtful breakups at worst. So yeah, once I anchored my standards in those like principles, I've had really great relationships and really great friendships. So, but that's me. I don't know. What is it for you? I think it's a good prompt of like, what are the deal breakers? Someone said, your comment about being in a mom role in relationships struck a chord. I'm tired of being a mom, planning dates, planning activities. How did you learn to take a step back from over-planning, over-giving, overdoing to find more balanced relationships? Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've been able to, sometimes the dynamic wasn't going to change and I had to leave it. So I don't know what your situation is. I've had to say, again, my experience of like, hey, I've noticed I'm exhausted. Do you mind picking up the slack on this? Like, I'd love to be surprised with a date. Would you do that this week, you know? Or would you in general do that more often? Are you willing to do that? Do you want to do that? You know, like the ball's in their court. They're their own person. They don't have to, you know, meet me halfway. But if I'm going 90% of the way to have a relationship with somebody and they're doing 10%, I just start grappling with what can I do without resenting you? What can I do without like being exhausted or burnt out or feeling like your mom, you know? There was a time that I was spending like an extended period of time with a partner and they just like kept not waking up on time for their work. And I had anxiety of like, you got to get to work, you know, like I understand you have like deep sleep and it's hard for you to wake up. And so I took it upon myself to start like waking them up and helping them with their alarm. And I realized like after a month or so of doing that, I was like, I feel like your mother. I getting you up to go to school. You know, you didn't ask me to do this. Sometimes they just don't ask you to do that. And we like see a need, so we fill a need. And then we realize we don't actually want to be doing that. And so I said it. I was like, I need to not wake you up. And then we just let any consequences land where they do. That person like was late to work more than once after that. And like, that's not my job. And so just sort of like it might be a little like nail biting. It might be a little tense. It might be uncomfortable to step back from doing the thing that we see needs to be done. Or like we want our need met, so we go ahead and make sure our own need is met. To let somebody else do what they're going to do and see what they do with that, you know? And sometimes people rise to the occasion. Sometimes it reveals that like, oh, if a relationship is only existing because I did 90%, then maybe I want a different kind of relationship with you. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but I'm like, then maybe I only reach out to you when you reach out to me. Or like, maybe I only see you a few days a month then, if that's what you're, like, I give what I get, you know? And I try to keep it proportional so that I don't resent the person. You know, so that I don't feel like a martyr and a victim, because that's what was happening. I was like, I'm not gonna do this, you know. So we have a role in that of participating in it, and so we can stop participating, and then the relationship itself kind of tells us what it's gonna do, you know. And maybe it involves some like letting go or some grief of, I hoped it would be something different, but I guess this is what it is. But then that actually, paradoxically, it winds up keeping the person in your life, has been my experience, because we don't burn out with each other. We just like accept the relationship on its own terms. It's going to do what it's going to do, if that makes sense. Next question in the chat. They said, I had a partner die suddenly over the holidays. Hi, I know who you are. I'm really sorry for your loss, and I feel for you. We had a mono-poly dynamic, they say, and while some of her friends and family knew I was poly, plenty did not. It's nice to connect with some more of her people in mourning, but I'm having some trouble riding the line between showing up authentically in grief and not feeling like I'm disclosing things about her life that she may not have been ready to disclose to them. You don't want to out her, you know, to family. I hear that. So the question is there any advice on separating those pieces of myself without it feeling dishonest or a disservice to her relationship with me, my other partner, etc.? It's probably not a monolith is my first thought. You might speak differently to her sibling than you might her grandmother. You know, that you don't necessarily have to be the same level of open to everyone. So context matters. I don't know how much you know about her relationships with them. Like, did she tell her sibling everything? And so then you can have a little bit more comfort or feel out what her sibling knows, and then you can decide how relaxed you are with conversation. For example, was her parent very religious and conservative? And so you know that that would be disruptive to have any sort of like, conversation about, radical relationships during this hard time, right? Like, so what do you know about her relationships with those people? Similar, like it's a heavier version. It's just full of a lot more grief and heaviness, but it is similar to when I'm talking about anyone to someone else. I don't want to tell someone else's story. So what story is mine to tell? So I cared a lot about this person. We were very close. Like whatever it is that is my story to tell. Here's what I remember about this person that I love about them. Here's what, to somebody that you can be more comfortable with. Here's what I was struggling with. I was struggling with feeling misunderstood, or I was struggling, like we were having some conflict and tension in this way. Like sharing our emotions, I feel like we can't really go wrong saying emotion words, right? And we don't necessarily have to get into the weeds of the details. So if it doesn't feel safe to say, for example, like we had conflict about one of my other partners and they don't know that you're polyamorous or that you were with her in that way. You don't have to say that. It's like, oh, we had tension and I wish I could have said this or that to her before she passed, or, so whatever your feelings are yours. Whatever your story is yours. And any details that feel like they could bring up uncomfortable questions or make people look at her differently, or you don't have to share those details. We can go vague while still being emotionally honest, has been my experience. So I don't know what that looks like for you, but I wouldn't want you to like hide or button up or suppress how you feel. And I hear you that some of the details might not be safe to share. So is there a more, safe version of what it is that you need to say? And what's the point of expressing? Is the point of expressing to connect with this person? Is the point of expressing to mourn and emote? Is the point to remember who you lost and celebrate her? What is the point of what I'm trying to say? And there's a way to say that without necessarily, getting into the weeds of the details. Yeah, I hope that your grief is supported by a lot of people around you. This person privately is saying, hopefully the heaviness of the question didn't derail things. Life is fucking heavy. Life is fucking heavy and brutal, and let's do it. Let's go there, right? We don't need to be chipper and cheery. That's not real, So I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you're bringing these thoughts to like spaces like this. If any role that I can play in supporting you during this time, like that's why I want to be here. So we don't censor anything, right? Like that's not what we're doing here. And thank you for sharing. So, alrighty. Well, that's what I have today. That's our live chat. I hope it was nice. I am pausing all of my free work, for the moment, my video essays and my podcast. I'm just hitting the pause on that, recharging my battery. I was getting worn a little thin because I don't have a team. Ishik works on the podcast with me and helps me write some stuff sometimes, but otherwise I'm cameraman, editor, writer, researcher. I'm doing it all, and for all of these different projects, which I love doing, and also burn the candle at both ends, and I started to be irritable, and I noticed a little bit of an edge in some of my last work, and I was like, I need to pause because I want to get back to that feeling of stability and balance. But all that to say, Patreon is staying consistent because you all pay my rent, and I love you, and it's also fun to interact with patrons because it's just all of you are here doing the thing, you know, you're all doing the thing, and you ask great questions, and I love being pen pals with you, and I love like having these meaningful conversations. It's so cool to be around people that are like really self-reflective and like trying to dig in and have the best kinds of relationships that they can have and grow, and like so that I get inspired by that too. So Patreon's continuing, and I will resume all of the unpaid stuff when I have energy for it. So thank you so much for being here. The consistency is really helping keep me balanced as well during this time. So yeah, I hope that you have a lovely start to 2026. I hope that you're surrounded by people that can give you warmth and space and grace and relief from the stressors all around us, right? That's what we want. A little bit of relief goes a long way. Alrighty. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.